Some of us just want to be accepted. Some of us loved high school. We were a big duck in a little puddle. We went to a small school. We were very popular. Not me, I'm talking about just generally. And all of a sudden, we're in we're in this university where we're just one of 5,000 students. And the first thing we want to do is be accepted in this new setting, this new surrounding that we find ourselves in. We don't want to look stupid by asking a dumb question in class. We don't want to fall asleep and make ourselves look dumb. We want to make sure we're hanging out with the right people, and right's a relative term. So we have these, we want to be accepted. That's in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We want to be loved. Political and community leaders are in fact opinion shapers. I couldn't make up my mind in 1968 who I wanted to support. Of course, I was only 12 years old, but my grandparents, my family down in Southwest Missouri, were very much supporting Hubert Humphrey for President of the United States back in 1968. Well, all the cool kids that I wanted to hang out with in Blue Springs were supporting Richard M. Nixon. And I remember having my little 20-inch Schwinn banana seat bicycle, and I went all over Blue Springs handing out push cards and bumper stickers for Richard Nixon for president in 1968. Because that's what the cool kids were doing.
And you were 12.
And I was 12 years old. So I got involved very politically as a little kid in politics. Now when I came down here to visit the Jeromes down in Southwest Missouri, I had to leave the Richard Nixon bumper stickers in Blue Springs. I couldn't bring those with me. Because my granddad down here, who I love dearly, just knew that I was a Democrat. But he didn't know what I was doing in the streets of Blue Springs back then. Anyway, so why do we believe what we do? We form any of our attitudes, values, and beliefs that shape our opinions through a process called political socialization. Can our view of politics, can our view of government change rather significantly as we age? And if it does change, how does it change? I mean, not from going from a Democrat to Republican. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, is it because we become more informed? I mean, what's happening to us that causes us to look at politics or the government differently? What's happening to us?
Hopefully we make more money, and then we have to pay more in, so that kind of changes your opinion a little bit. Where I'm from in Wisconsin, it went from everybody having a farm and being a farmer, more of a democratic attitude, to then going and working in the factories, having to pay taxes, turning more Republican. Mm-hmm. That's what I saw within my family.
You become more conservative.
Yeah, we tend to become a little bit more conservative as we age. Why is that? Why does that occur, do you think?
Because you feel silly doing the stuff that when you were younger.
Yeah, I hope my kid doesn't do what I do.
Well, I mean, you get older and you just are more inclined to stay home.
Yeah, I need to get my act together so my son doesn't do what I did when I was his age, because I need to be more conservative. I don't want to set a bad example, or example I don't want him to follow, or whatever the case may be. So I moved down to Southwest Missouri when I was 12 years old, right after the election, or about when I was 13, I can't remember, 12 or 13. And so my parents come down here, or my parents, my grandparents, my dad, everybody, they were down here, they're Democrats. And so I started thinking about being a Democrat now. I was really concerned about my politics at 12 years old. So I was told I was going to be a Democrat, and I was going to act like one, walk like one, talk like one, look like one. So I became a Democrat. Met a lot of Democrat political people, campaigned for some, looked up to a lot of them. And then I went in the Army. And I started becoming a little bit more conservative about things. And I started shifting my viewpoint about politics from the Democratic Party more to the Republican Party. You have to keep in mind that when I went in the Army, Gerald Ford was President of the United States. Shortly thereafter, obviously he ran for election in November of '76. So thereafter, Jimmy Carter was my commander-in-chief for most of the time that I was in the Army as an enlisted person. And the military was suffering a great deal with budget. And then when Ronald Reagan got elected, I was an Army officer at that time, became an Army officer shortly thereafter, and got involved in that campaign. So again, I started shifting. I started being my own person more and more because I was away from my family now. I was out there doing my own thing in a military career, and I started thinking about what was important to me personally, really for the first time when I left home. And I did change. I did change. And it really irks my dad today, who will be soon 82 years old, still a hardcore Democrat. And it really irks him to put my bumper stickers on his truck when he campaigns for me. But he does it because he wants to. So. But he wished there was a donkey on there instead of an elephant. Some age differences in politics are a result of life cycle effects. And we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs when we're talking about that. I can't remember what all Maslow's needs are, but we'll get the point out. These are physiological needs. Physiological. Yep, close. These are safety needs. Love, actualization, self-actualization, and esteem. Self-esteem. These are, when I first got married at 18, 30 days out of high school, arguably we were not ready to be married, and we went immediately into poverty because my take-home pay at Paul Mueller in Springfield was $84 a week. Gas was 25 cents a gallon too, so we didn't have to pay rent because we had a house for some reason, and we didn't have to pay rent or buy it or anything, so we just lived there. So things were relatively cheap. Then I went to work for the railroad. First 7 years of our life, we were in poverty because as an Army private, I can assure you, you're in poverty, especially back then. And my bring-home pay as a private was $380 a month in Colorado Springs and Fort Carson. Our rent for our apartment was $150 a month. Then we had to buy groceries, then we had to pay for a car, we had to have insurance. So $385 usually ran out about the 15th of every month. And the other 2 weeks you were either wrapping pennies or coins or trying to figure out, or visiting that nice aunt and uncle up in Denver who had really great meals on weekends. So you did what you had to do to be able to just survive. That was pretty much physiological. I was so poor when I got out of the Army in December of '79, right after they took the Iranian hostages. My wife and daughter had already moved back to Missouri, where I was going to attend college at Warrensburg. And I went by the PX at Fort Carson and I bought 10 dresses for my daughter because I didn't think I was ever going to be able to afford to buy her another one. So I spent all the money I had in my pocket at the time and bought her dresses. So I really wasn't thinking too much about politics at that time. I was thinking about how are we going to survive. And actually, when I went to college, we were making more money in Warrensburg than I was making as a private or as a sergeant eventually in Carson. You start getting a little bit in your savings account. You start having a little bit of money left over at the end of the month. You're able to provide for your insurance needs, your housing, and you start growing up and you're feeling pretty safe now. Now you're able to kind of start planning for the future, being involved in the community, being involved in organizations, getting involved in a job, and you want to be accepted. You want to be accepted. You want to be able to come in and be that good intern or be that good second lieutenant or whatever the case may be. And you want to be accepted by your peers at the university or whatever the case may be. Then you end up being pretty good at those things. You're getting raises, you're getting promotions, you're getting other opportunities, you're continuing your education by taking up a master's degree or whatever, and people start looking at you like you're pretty much an expert. You're on the road, so you start self-actualizing. You start feeling really good about yourself and what you've done. You may even start thinking about politics a little bit differently than you ever had before, based on where you're now, your station in life. Self-esteem, you've arrived. You got that terminal degree. You got that job that you want. You got that house in the burbs with a family and 2 cars and a boat and a camper, or whatever you want. And you feel good that you're confident and capable, professional in what you're doing. And you might be able to say, I'm going to go out and work on some campaigns. I'm going to get involved in the community. I'm going to run for city council. Do all kinds of things. What would you do if I told you that perhaps some of us can go through this cycle? Maybe not clear back down at the bottom, but we could certainly go back and go through this maybe 2 or 3 times in our life. Bless you. I did. You know, after serving 23 and a half years in the Army, and then get out in 99, then I go back and work for an engineering firm in Kansas City. First thing I want to do is understand the business and be accepted by the people that work there and be good at that and go through that cycle all over again. I think it has a lot to do, maybe, if the Democratic Party represents the poor person, domestic programs, and you're reliant on those programs, or know somebody very near and dear to your heart, you may have an affinity for the Democratic Party, because that's the party that you perceive as representing your interests the best. And a lot of it has to do with the way all this has been manifested in your life as an individual. If you think that perhaps you don't need those domestic programs as much, and that everybody should be responsible for themselves, whether they fail or they succeed, and you don't want the government to help you, and I'm just making generalizations here. I'm not trying to say that this is what, then maybe you're looking at the Republican Party as your party of choice. And maybe that's why you become a Republican, or that's why you become a Democrat. And maybe you don't like either party, because you think they're full of crooks, and so I'm going to be an independent, or a moderate, or whatever the case may be. Well, party identification. Here's kind of what our authors say about that. People who are highly religious, apparently about 49% align themselves with the Republican Party, 10% about independent, and 37% Democrat or lean Democrat with regard to professing to be highly religious. Always intrigued when I hear highly religious. It's kind of like being pregnant. Either you're pregnant, how do you be highly pregnant? I guess if you're 8.5 months along, I guess that's very pregnant, but I'm a little pregnant, moderately pregnant. I'm kind of so pregnant. Well, it's either I'm religious or I'm not, isn't it? I mean, I don't know. What's highly religious?
People who
Attend church
a lot,
and
like,
Well, I attend
Twice
church
a
every
week.
Sunday, but I wouldn't say I'm highly religious.
Are
right,
you-
there's people who go like every day and.
Or that's their life. That's what they
Right.
put
They're
out front
ministers.
all the time. Well, they're just people that practice their
Right.
faith day in and day out, every minute of every day, and door knockers or whatever, but then there's people that are religious. But why does this change from highly religious to people who are just religious, changing from the Republican Party to Democrats? I mean, what happened there? So if we're highly religious, then we're going to be Republican. If we're just religious, we're going to be Democrats.
It's the view on right to life might have a lot to do with it. I mean, if you're highly religious, there's just no way you believe that abortion should be legal. If
Well,
you're
maybe that's
that doesn't mean you can't still be religious and have an open mind
Well, you
about.
got there a little bit faster than I wanted to.
Okay.
But you're going down you got to the ends before we got through the means.
Okay.
So, but I appreciate your thoughtfulness, Don. But we see kind of a problem taking place. We're going from highly to not, and the more we go to the right, the red bars go down. The more we go to the right, the Democrat bars go up. So can we take the takeaway from this chart? The less religious you are, the more Democrat you are likely to be. The more of a Democrat thinker you're likely. That's capital D, not small d, Democrat Party. The more religious you are, the more likely you are to be a Republican. Now, let's have some fun. Is that true in your mind? Is it because we're in the Bible Belt that we can accept this? And oh, by the way, this is a very red corner of the state of Missouri. I mean, when I say red, the red is the color of the Republican Party, the blue is the color of the Democrat Party. You'll find out if you look at a political map of Missouri, it's not only red, it's red in this corner of the state. But I know a very strong Republican conservative that is not religious at all. In fact, he had a near-death experience. He was dead for 8 days, pretty much. I mean, they had to put what they call the paddles where they resuscitate your heart. They used it on him 43 times to get him back to life. I asked him, I said, you know, did you have any out-of-body experience? Did you see St. Peter? Did you see anybody? No, just dark for 8 days. Nothing happened to him. Very strong Republican. If I would give you his name, you could probably Google him and he'd pop up all over the Joplin Globe. But what do you think about this? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's fair to you? Are you glad there are bars there at all? Is that what I'm, you know, is that, but look at the independents.
I was going to say, I'm surprised how low it is. It just seems why would it be so?
But it looks like the independents would lean more towards, based on that, relatively speaking, they would lean more towards the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
Because the bars are going in the same direction as the Democrat Party. So is an independent really an independent? We don't know because we can't look inside those green bars, right? You have to assume that some of them lean to the right or to the Republican Party. Why is this important? Authors talk about it. Why is this important? Why should religion cross over into the political viewpoint? Isn't that separation of church and state issue?
Because it already has, I mean, they're already.
I mean, we can't separate who we are, right? Well, I'm going to take the religious part of Jerome out, and I just want to talk, I don't want to describe what you'd have left, but you can't, we're unalienable, if I could say the word. We can't separate the two. We are who we are.
The politicians know this. They see
Well, of course they know this.
Like
Of course they know this.
They play on it, lean against it.
Okay, we'll finish this on Wednesday.